Tom Miyashiro is the founder of From Faith to Faith, which ministers on the mission field of New England on the East Coast of the United States. His ministry focuses on youth-centered, community-based outreach and partnership with the local church. Today, you will be inspired as you listen to the story of everything that God has done through his ministry.
Jesus said, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel."
Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved.
Welcome to the Evangelism Podcast with Dr. Daniel King, where Daniel interviews full-time evangelists, pastors, missionaries, and normal everyday Christians to discover how they share their faith, their powerful testimonies, and amazing stories that will inspire you to reach people with the good news. And now, here's your host, missionary and evangelist, Daniel King.
Welcome to the Evangelism Podcast. I'm Daniel King, and I'm excited about telling people about Jesus. Today I have a very special guest with me, Tom Miyashiro.
You got it.
From a great ministry on the East Coast of the United States called Faith to Faith.
That's it.
Thank you so much for joining me on the Evangelism Podcast.
It's a lot of fun to be here in Africa.
Yeah, we are here together in Kenya, Africa, in the city of Moringa. We have been here for several days already, and today is the third day of the festival. We had a little bit of rain yesterday, and so we were a little disappointed with the size of the crowd, but today the sun is out, the sun is shining, and they've just started the festival. They just sent us a picture. It looks like there's already a lot of people there, and as soon as we get done with this tonight, we're going to go over there and preach the gospel.
You're going to rip it up tonight, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Amen. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Faith to Faith.
Sure.
Tell me about the ministry. Who are you? What do you guys do?
Faith to Faith is 22 years old. I started it when I was 19, and we like to say we're spreading the gospel through youth-centered, community-based outreach in partnership with the church. So what does that mean? It means for a good chunk of the last 20 years, I didn't travel that much. I worked in one community as a community evangelist, and I tried to work with the same group of pastors over and over and over again. So it's only been recently that I've come further out from that space.
So which community have you focused on over these years?
Well, I'm from the New England states. Well, I'm from Connecticut, which is one of the 6 New England states, but in recent years, there's been some good data to suggest that New England is one of the least reached places in our country. And so, as an evangelist, it just makes sense to just dig my heels in and try and be part of the solution to the sliding decline in Christianity in the Northeast.
So you're really on a mission field there. And what attitudes do you run into when you start talking about the gospel?
Well, the Northeast is pretty liberal. I would say that Connecticut specifically is fiscally conservative and socially incredibly liberal. So it is, the people, in some ways feel conservative, and New Englanders tend to be closed. It's not always been known as the friendliest of places, and we speak the language of sarcasm as our dialect.
No. Are you sure?
So it's the average size church in New England is between 50 and 150 people. Now there's exceptions to the rules. Major cities like Boston and Greater New York, some parts of Connecticut are considered part of Greater New York, which we consider them the exception to the rule. But a lot of pastors in the Northeast are bivocational. They have to work 2 jobs, not unlike Old England. There's a lot of similarities in the way that you do ministry there. It can be very challenging.
And so how have you, as an evangelist, come alongside some of the local pastors and local churches and help to strengthen them and then help them to reach out to their communities?
Well, early in Faith to Faith, I was a missionary to England, and I found that if there was anywhere more difficult than living in New England, it would be that, Old England. So I worked there and did ministry there and did some education there and learned about how the UK has adjusted itself to the Christian church not really being valued or appreciated or relevant to culture. And actually, one of the guys on this mission, Ben Jack, he's part of that story, and the organization he works for kind of saw the way the missions community was innovating to make Christianity relevant again to the next generation. And I thought, wow, if we could bring some of these ideas back to the United States, that would be really good for us. So I started importing as many of these ideas into the U.S. as I could, particularly to do with public schools ministry, because in America, we have the separation of church and state. In England, the church and state is one. So they can do a whole lot of stuff in schools. Now, granted, you can't proselytize in school, same as America, but you could actually tell the whole Christian story in school. It's not a problem. So you can do quite a lot there. When we come back into the U.S. context, we left England to have religious freedom, and yet I can't talk about Jesus in school. It doesn't make much sense. But we had to find ways to creatively engineer schools programming so that we could still be there and still have relationships with students whilst finding a way to get the gospel to them. So it took, instead of doing things in one swift movement, we had to create steps. Next steps, lots of next steps to create pathways for young people to engage us in school and out of school. This is the bulk of my career doing that. So
yeah. Now, sometimes it's not easy to stay faithful to the calling of an evangelist. And yesterday, you and I were talking about a very tragic situation in the early years of your ministry.
Sure.
Tell me about your wife going to heaven and what that was like going through that and how you dealt with that.
Yeah.
And then what God has brought you through and into now.
Yeah, so Amy was from England, and we got married young, 2001, and I started the ministry very shortly after us coming together, and I followed her back to England. So that's kind of the early years. When we moved back to the United States, it wasn't very long after that she was diagnosed with a pretty rare form of brain cancer. And speeding through, because she was sick for 4 years, speeding through kind of the early trauma of all of that, when we landed back home in Connecticut, the local church heard about our story, and I got to see the best side of the church in this case. And churches in the county that I lived, within a radius of our house, as they heard about the story, everybody just started stepping up and helping us. And I felt very indebted and very thankful for all those leaders. And I didn't cheat on her. I didn't run out and divorce her. I stayed with her till the end. It wasn't...
And it was very difficult.
It was very difficult.
She's laying there in your house.
Yep. 4 years of brain cancer, which means 11 brain surgeries, radiation, chemotherapy, experimental treatments, sometimes simultaneously. So I was a full-time carer as well as trying to do evangelism in the community. And the community didn't really know how to help us specifically. So in some ways, Faith to Faith kind of bolstered itself up because people could see they could support me in that, and that was helping her. And so that's kind of when Faith to Faith got rooted, and probably would have taken me a lifetime to build those relationships in a different, just in a natural kind of way. It aged my relationships with church leaders in a really productive way. And so especially in that last year of her life, we were full on shut-ins, and she was paralyzed on one side of her body, and I had to pretty much do everything for her. But in return, after she passed away, I really dug my heels in to my community and tried to pay back the debt of love by using my evangelistic skill set and applied it within a local church context, within a community of churches, not just the community of churches, the community at large. And what happens when an evangelist has a very short leash? Well, I was a police chaplain, which means I had full police dress, a key card to the station, access to ride with any officer in the city. I had keys to the public school and a master password to the Power School database and could recall any records on any student in the vicinity, in the city. I had access to the mayor's office. I had access to community foundation dollars. I had access to all the local banks that partnered with me. And really, it's an issue of just being known and knowing people. And I stuck around long enough and served long enough for all that stuff to really matter. So within the community, we saw that, wow, if evangelism doesn't itinerate heavily and really finds a way to partner with the local church, it brings a spice to a region that is just not like churches don't typically have that spice. And when the church really partners together, and it's not just a one-time seasonal thing, but a repeat event, it's like, this is the way we all do church. It's a really nice relationship. And in these last 5 or 6 years, we started getting calls from other communities asking me if I could do it there as well. And I was like, no, because there's one of me and I can only be a member of one community. But I'm willing to come and see what kind of pieces you have in the community and see if there's anything transferable for your area that you can do. And if you commit to doing it, then I'll walk with you a little bit. But inevitably, you fall in love with people. So I have little homes I stay in different regions, and I come in and I call churches together and we walk through a process and we talk and we pray. And it's not the same in every community, but there's the same components.
Talk to me about that process. What are some of the components of helping build community in a particular community between the churches, and then to get the church to have a heart for evangelism?
I like to talk about it as the life cycle of evangelism, and it is cyclical, just like breathing. And I think that a lot of times, either evangelists or people who love evangelism or people who are put off by it catch the cycle, and it's always in rhythm with itself, but where they are in their walk with the Lord may not be in sync with the rhythm of the community, and they try and force it. So it's almost like trying to take a double inhale or a double exhale. All you do is inhale, you're going to suffocate, and all you do is exhale, you're going to suffocate. So either way, it doesn't work out for you if you only like one thing. But if you figure out the rhythm of the community and where they're at in the life cycle of evangelism, and you pay attention and then jump into where they are in their breathing pattern, you can move them towards mobilization for a season of harvest, and then recovery, and then repeat the process again and again and again, just like the seasons. So usually there's a period of time where a community is pre-mobilization, where things are disconnected, and maybe that's a result of job changes, like pastors retiring or getting a new job and leaving the area. Or even in government and things like that, just paying attention to, it seems to happen more than once. It's not just one guy doing it. It seems like there's several key people all transitioning at the same time. That seems like a bad period of time to try and push people into some kind of evangelistic effort. If there's a lot of transitions, you sort of have to reestablish baseline of relationships, call people together, be generous to them, and buy a lot of food, and just create an environment where people can just be friends.
Yeah.
We miss that step sometimes in evangelism and just want to get to the good stuff, and that can be a long season. Berkshire County, which is Western Mass. I've been stewarding a pastor's network there for I think about 7 years. And I have a unique role in that community because I actually am the facilitator, like the founder of the network as the evangelist, which I'm always ready to go, but they're not ready to go. And being patient and allowing them to raise their own temperature for evangelism, it's a very slow and painful and disciplined process. 7 years and we still haven't gone for it yet. What's going on? But sprinkling in activities that move them closer together, like National Day of Prayer, something on the calendar already that I can give them a little boost, like, see, you can do something together. Okay, now let's debrief that, take a break, have some food, relax, no pressure, and then try again, you know? So, but it takes patience. And some communities are further along, like they already have a pastor's network, they've been praying together for a while, and you walk into a moving situation where like they're gonna do something, anything, and you just happen to be the excuse that walked into the room that's going to make it relevant for go time. Those are fun places to walk into. Most evangelists roam the earth looking for communities in that phase. And that's a lot of fun because you can just roll in with your textbook playbook and give them things to do and they will rock, and then you can take pictures and say, look what we did for the Lord. And then the final phase is sort of like this recovery phase, which sometimes evangelists leave town too early and they don't stick around to celebrate and help reset the program, thank everybody, thank people, and maybe even reward them and offer them rest. Because like a lot of times, even in the church world, even in church volunteerism, it's like, well, Sundays are coming, so take Monday off, do something, because we got to do this all over again. And I think that's why people burn out. They don't have ample time to recover before you ask the next big ask. So I think being with the community through that celebration and recovery period makes them more willing to say yes as the cycle moves towards mobilization for the next season of harvest.
Yeah. Now, recently you have started doing some things in Poland and now Ukraine.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that, because that's very different than Eastern United States. You're going into Eastern Europe now.
You know, we've been there actually for a long time, but the result of it is actually still community-based. Our young people started growing up. Some of them came to work for the ministry. Some of them graduated and went off to Bible college. Some of them started ministries of their own. And some of them sort of graduated the faith-to-faith world and jumped into bigger ministries. And one young man, who you've met on this trip as well, grew up in the ministry. I mean, I've known him as far back as maybe 15 years old. And when he got to age 18, he asked to meet me at a Starbucks. And I was just one guy, no staff yet. And he comes in with a briefcase, puts it on the table. There's nothing in it except one piece of paper. And he slides it across the table and says, I think there's many ways I can help you build your ministry. And I'm like, oh, really, young man? And he walks me through his strategic plan for how he thinks he can help me build faith to faith. I said, sounds great, let's do it. And he was my first employee.
Wow.
But as God stirred his heart and his passion, he'd done a church mission trip to Poland, and he felt led to go. He asked for some time, then he asked for more time, then he asked for like a year, and I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous. I can't have an employee gone for a year. But for some reason, I'd let it go, and he went, and then it just like turned into this vibrant community-based thing over there. And it wasn't me doing it, it was him, and he built his own network, and us working together, like he figured out, it's not like he figured out his own way completely, like he did it the faith-to-faith way, but he did it through his own personality and he's not an evangelist. That's what's interesting about him. He's more of a missions director, but he still like rallied the community, did evangelism, and I was like, Well, I guess that's what multiplication looks like. And he's been doing that for 12 years now. So
Wow.
amazing to watch him develop. And now here, even on this trip, we have 7.
So what's his name? It's
Kyle Duba.
Yeah.
And he's on this trip, but 7 other young leaders on this trip accompany me here in Kenya. And the concept is that we do it all over again and again, and we expose these young bucks to the world of evangelism, get them hungry, and then find a way to release them into the stratosphere.
That's awesome.
So it's a fun time, and you've gotten to be part of this. You got to speak into the life of David and Alan and Nick Hurst and others that have come on this trip.
Yeah, you brought some real quality young guys that I really see God's hand on them. I really love talking about evangelism coaching, and you've been doing that recently, especially with the ministry of Nick Hall.
Yep.
Pulse. They had a Pulse 100, which was 100 young people that they gathered together who have a heart for evangelism.
That's right.
And Tim Robnett from Multnomah University, who I took an evangelism class with, he was helping to shape these young evangelists. And then you were one of the coaches for the Pulse 100.
Yep.
And so talk to me about that and what your heart is for coaching young evangelists and helping them to launch out into the ministry.
Closely related to what we're doing here in Kenya, but Pulse 100 is 2 years old, and actually it's 100 kids a year. So we just finished our second year, our second cohort, we're calling it. And when they were starting it up, there was several evangelists that Nick pulled closer who work with youth. We all pushed together to stock that first class, and nobody really knew where we were going or how we were going to do it. But we got that first group together, and Dr. Tim was called in to write the curriculum for the master class that we would teach the kids. And Dr. Tim was all of our coaches right within this Palau Global Network world for so many years.
Yeah.
So when Jose Zayas got pulled in and I got pulled in, Tim Innes, who used to be the Africa director,
Love Brother
pulled
Tim.
in. Reed Saunders gets pulled in.
Wow.
And
You got everyone but me.
Brad Butcher.
But I was talking to Nick in Amsterdam,
Yeah.
and we were talking about some possibilities. So.
Yeah, definitely. We'd love to have you. So the thing is, there isn't that many of us in the world doing it full time to lean on. So I think as we grow and as we get better at doing what we're doing and as we get better as coaches, like the opportunities for evangelists to partner in and pour into the next generation is definitely there. But one of the cool things about Pulse 100 is you have to go through this application process. You have to make a video preaching the gospel, and then you send it in, and if you make it in, you're invited to this showcase. And when you show up, you're given a time to show up, and Dr. Robnett and I and about 7 or 8 other coaches are broken up into 3 rooms with no windows, very small room. These young people come in one after another like cattle. They have to preach to us, and we grade their preaching.
Wow.
And it's a very terrifying experience for them. And then we go through all the different young people and we pick the top 3, and they get to showcase for the whole program and preach to the whole room with the crowd and the celebrity guest judging panel, just like American Idol. And Alan Stokes was the one that I picked, and he preached to the celebrity panel and to the whole room.
Wow.
Last year's cohort. So that's how closely connected all these things are. Nick Hurst was also in the Pulse 100. But anyways, what's really exciting about it is I almost feel like Nick, the world of evangelism is kind of resetting. Billy Graham's passed away, Luis Palau has passed away, and others. And that commanding general who calls everyone together is sort of a little bit absent in the world of evangelism. So Nick pieced together some of those middle-aged guys who were coming up together, the younger guys who are now middle-aged guys, got our coach back involved, and he's just taking this big sifter and we're mining for gold. We don't know what we're going to find, and of that, finding incredible talent. And now that we find it, we're like, okay, now how do we disciple them, move them towards falling in love with evangelism like you and I have, and make that the goal of their life?
I mean, I think this program is so valuable, what Pulse 100 is doing, because I think you can accelerate a ministry by at least a decade by getting them around other evangelists because someone who has a calling, they could figure out how to do it all on their own, but they'd make so many mistakes. It'd be such a challenge.
Yeah.
But just being around other evangelists and someone who's gone a little bit further, we can accelerate their ministries by at least 10 years, maybe 20 years, where they can launch out and do something big for God, and they don't have to wait, and they don't have to make the mistakes the last generation made.
That's right. So this final piece of it, which brings it full circle right back here to Africa, is my new role in Global Network of Evangelists, which is to be a catalyst for emerging evangelists, which is sort of a broad title, but it gives me the flexibility to come in and out of Palau, in and out of your ministry, in and out of Nick Hall's ministry, and really identify and affirm and equip and train, and as they kind of move into this world, that's the mission of G&E actually. So, but once they've been identified, to try and begin to assimilate them into our global network and give them opportunities that are far beyond their time, like preaching here at the festival in Moronga, and exposing them to career evangelists, guys like you, pairing them up early so that we can accelerate and.
Yesterday on the podcast, I interviewed Nick Hurst, he was one of the Pulse 100. He's here in Africa. He had his first opportunity to preach in Africa the other night, and did such a phenomenal job, did a great job, and he has such a heart for evangelism. God's going to use him in such a great way.
It is, and it's so cool I know that the Palau team did so much to help me when I was starting, and so I feel like Desmond Henry, the director of G&E, has given me an opportunity to sort of give that experience back to the next guys, and it's just a joy to be able to do that, because I know how valuable all the guys who were ahead of me were when I was getting started.
Yeah. Well, as one of the cabinet members for the Global Network of Evangelists, I say thank you.
Awesome.
And I'm super excited to see what God will develop in the next few years.
Amazing.
I'm excited just to be a part of it.
Yeah, definitely.
So, sometimes people who are listening, they want to get involved with the ministry that we're interviewing. And so if someone has a heart for ministry in the Northeast, maybe they want to support your ministry, maybe they want to be a part of what you're doing. What's your website? How can they find out more about you?
It's F as in Frank, the number 2, F as in Frank, M as in Michael, I as in Eichel.org.
Okay, so
F2FMI.org.
Yep,
that's
wonderful. Well, Brother Tom, thank you so much for being on the Evangelism Podcast. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Is there evidence for God's existence? How do we really know Jesus was raised from the dead? Can we trust the Bible? Do miracles happen? Does God care about me as an individual? In Dr. Daniel King's book, Proof God is Real, you'll find the answers to these 3 vital questions and more. Is God there? Does God care? And do I dare to follow him? In his powerful, easy-to-read book, Daniel provides 7 convincing proofs of God's existence. You'll learn about the evidence of cause, design, logic, morality, scripture, miracles, and religious experience. With Proof God is Real, you'll read about topics like, was Jesus the Son of God or just a crazy preacher? If God does exist, is he interested in your life? If God is there, why do bad things happen to good people? In Proof God is Real, Daniel King shows you God is there and he cares for you. Plus, how to take a leap of faith and start a relationship with a God who deeply loves you. Order Proof God is Real today by calling 1-877-431-4276 or find the book on Amazon.
Thanks so much for listening today. I am excited about telling people about Jesus, and I want to invite you to be a part of helping us to rescue people from hell and take them with us to heaven. There's 2 things you can do to help. First of all, can you go find the Evangelism Podcast on Apple iTunes and leave us a positive review? By giving a review, you will help help other people find these valuable resources about sharing our faith? And second, would you become a financial partner with King Ministries? Every single dollar that people give us enables us to lead at least one person to Jesus. And so that means for only $1, you can help start a party in heaven. And so today I want to invite you to become a monthly partner. You can start out for just $1, but if God puts it on your heart to do more, of course you can do more. But please go to kingministries.com and become a monthly partner with us today to help us to lead more people to Jesus. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
For more information about how to share your faith or to financially support our worldwide evangelistic outreaches, visit kingministries.com. Again, that's kingministries.com.